Hi, buddy. What's your name?
Carlos Perez.
First time here at the PowerShell Conference Europe?
In fact, it is my first time, and it's exciting. I really like it.
Yeah. Where are you from?
I'm from Puerto Rico. I work at TrustedSec. I'm the research lead at TrustedSec.
We should mention, I guess not everybody knows that belongs to the United States.
That's correct. Puerto Rico is a colony of the U.S.
And you're pretty famous for especially one module. I guess people know a bunch of your works, but one is your icon software. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, it is POSH-SSH. POSH-SSH is a module specifically for automation of servers and devices using the SSH protocol. So you can issue commands to devices. In addition to that, it has support for SCP and SFTP.
I've been using that for quite a long time, and the first reason was there was no better solution. What's your opinion about the integration of SSH daemon in Windows Server, SSH client in the operating system, the client operating systems, and how does that touch your solution? Will that be someday not be needed? I guess it's not true.
No. One of the things that you have now with the client is that you have an interactive session. You can operate with the SSH server at the other side. That is great. Now, this is command line. You're not getting an object. For anybody that's used to PowerShell, in PowerShell, we're used to working with objects. So at least the module for the time being is going to be of great use for people that are already used to working with PowerShell. In the case of OpenSSH server in Windows, I think it's great. Many of my colleagues have said about time that Microsoft did it. So I'm very excited with it. It means that now I have one single channel of communication and automation between Windows, Linux, and other devices. In the case of remoting, I think that's great. If you're a PowerShell user, now you can remote using PowerShell. A lot of people, I see them using that for automation. Also, I see other people just sticking with the module I wrote because of the main reason is that you cannot install PowerShell remote in a Cisco router. You cannot do it in a VIOS device. You cannot do it in storage, SAN appliance, or NAS appliance. And in the case of some Linux hosts, probably you're using containers and you don't want to deploy PowerShell remoting inside of those containers and configure. It's just an extra step of complexity that they would have to go through if they don't see a value for it. So I do see some moving there and others simply staying due to those reasons.
I know that this started as a side project and originally you're a researcher, a security researcher. So first question then is, what's your favorite operating system? Is there something like that? Isn't it amazing how open-minded Microsoft now is, and we can switch through all the operating systems?
I do love that Microsoft have shifted there. So far, in terms of operating systems, I'm comfortable both in Linux, Mac OS, and also in Windows. In the case of Windows, it depends a lot on the hardware platform. I've had experience with Dell and Lenovo machines, and Lenovo machines have had zero problems on them. Sadly, on the Dell XPS series, as soon as Microsoft comes out with a new version, large version like Creators Edition, versions like those, all of a sudden it breaks a ton of stuff on the Dell that doesn't break on the Lenovo, and it gives me kind of a bad experience. But overall in the OS, I don't mind Windows 10. I'm very comfortable in Windows. I'm comfortable with Windows servers. I'm comfortable with Linux servers. I try to not attach any emotion to my tools. So I try to see programming languages and operating systems as tools. I think that the moment one attaches some emotion to them, you lose flexibility and you lose context on what are its strengths and its weaknesses in those cases.
Exactly. I can support that idea. That it should not be so religious, what we say very, very often. I know this consumes a lot of time, developing SSHD. What are the do's and don'ts that you would never do again, and the things that you are planning for the future?
Yeah, so stuff that I would not do, or let's start with the do's. Stuff that I would do is improve the documentation. I know I have to improve the documentation, and one of the things that I want to do is add videos. So I started recording some of the stuff in YouTube, it's specific for that, and linking those into GitHub for the project, because I've seen that the new generation of people that are coming up in the industry, they prefer videos to do what they're doing. And for quick learning. In the case of the module itself, I want to do more testing, more integration testing. I think that will save me a ton of headache that I have not done. In terms of style, since I've been the only developer for it, I have no problem with the style because it is my style. But in the future, probably I'll do automation for pull requests where I have so far I've only gotten a handful of those, but I hope that in the future I get more. And I want to automate that with PSConfEU analyzer, so it will go through those. And as soon as I push to the development branch, there's something like app-per-year where it's going to do testing. I think that will save me a ton of headaches in the long run, and that is something I have to set some time for at the end of the year to implement. Now, in the future, for version 3.0, I was hoping to have full support for Linux, Mac OS. I'm having problems with the library that I'm using that currently is kind of funky with those platforms. I don't want to introduce something that is so unstable for people using it. So for the time being, it will remain Windows only module, but I'm going to introduce a series of breaking changes. For example, I'm going to get rid of the SCP commandlets that save folder and file, and it's going to switch to item. So I'm going to make it as PowerShell as possible in terms of the default wording in it. I want to change some of the ways that the pipeline works in some of the parameters. And in addition to that, I want to make sure that I'm returning objects with proper information so you know from which of the multiple hosts everything came from. Some people gave me the idea of looking at providers for SCP. I need to check that out, how hard it is. I think the person to ask that would be Ravi with chips. I think he's the expert there. He's kind of led the way there. So I think I'm going to more than likely ping him today on that. And the don'ts? And the don'ts is don't promise stuff in GitHub issues. I've made that mistake of telling people, I know I'll get this to you next week. And then I'm trying to figure out I'm not able. Life gets in the way and also stuff happens. And it makes me feel bad that I'm failing on schedules. I'm kind of a bit of OCD, and I don't like that. So not make promises. Make sure that in GitHub I would have placed templates for issue creation. I need to add that so it's easier for me to do stuff. Another don't is I should have not started the project without tests. I should have at the very least have a script that would have done it at the beginning, and I learned hard a lot of time down the road to do that. And now stuff like Pester, I need to include it. I think that would be best. And also the inclusion of Aperture into the mix. I should have done that a lot earlier, but back then when it started, there was no Pester, there was none of that stuff. And it was a mistake that I made not adding some testing, any testing into it.
You're here for the first time at the conference in Europe, but you've been, I guess, twice to Germany. Yeah. What's your impression, especially if you compare that to different conferences that you've seen? Do you like the venue? Do you like the people? Do you see from an American perspective, are people here totally different, or share we all the same code inside? What's your impressions about the conference and about Europe?
Well, in terms of the conference, it's very similar to some of the conferences in the US. I think in terms of organization, I've felt so far with my limited experience of only three conferences here in Europe, that here in Europe, they have flowed more, a bit more organized than some of the ones in the US. In terms of people, everybody has been great. Same as, I think us in the geek culture, in the IT culture, we tend to be very open with each other. people that tend to be very introverted see a chance of finding other introverted people and are more open to talk with those. I think culture-wise, I think nationality doesn't play between us geeks, which is something that I love. It reminds me of the Hacker Manifesto in some ways. I'm kind of old school type hacker, so I keep going back to that in my old days.
Maybe one day, as a security researcher, we have a very, very big conference here from the Chaos Communication Congress, from the CCC, which is a huge hacker organization, and they really live that spirit. So maybe one day, it's every year after Christmas. I'm pretty sure if you come back to Germany, come back to Europe, you will hear that from other hackers. Maybe one day you will see that, and this is it's a little bit more than a little bit bigger than PSConf, and you see that you're absolutely right. It's obviously it has to do something with IT, with the geekiness that we don't care so much about our country where we by accident were born, so whatsoever. But that's a good note for final question. So you will go back now to Puerto Rico, and to make perfectly clear how value it is that you're here, because no one gets paid here. How long will you travel home?
It was 26 hours to get here, and it's going to be around 32 to get back.
So I think I'm allowed to emphasize that this is passion. So Carlos, thank you. Thank you for the great module, and thank you that you're here. I hope to see you again.
Thank you.